Rainy day to all my self-care family and friends. Welcome back to another Room2Breathe podcast. I'm your host, Life Coach 614, and I am so glad that you made space to be here today. Now, before we get into this episode, I want you to do me a quick favor. If you're feeling the vibes, go ahead and show us some love by tapping the screen, liking, commenting, and be sure to share this out with someone who may need a little healing energy today. And if this is your first time here or you haven't done so already, be sure to hit that follow button. Subscribe to our channel so that way you're always tapped in when a new episode drops. I also want to personally invite you to check out our digital home at theselfcareclub.org, where you will find everything from affirmative apparel to motivational merch and free resources to help nourish your growth and remind you that you're supported every step of the way. Just know that you don't have to do this alone. We are healing in community, growing one breath, one moment, one day at a time. So today I urge you to give yourself permission to pause, to reflect, and to make space for peace, for growth, and most importantly, for you. Now, if anything in today's episode hits home, be sure to drop a green heart in the chat. It is our community's way of saying that I am healing, I'm growing, and I am showing up for me. Now, let's get ready to breathe, reflect, and grow together. Now, if you've ever felt like entrepreneurship was supposed to give you freedom, but instead it left you tired, stretched thin, and giving more of yourself than you actually had to give, this episode is for you. Today, we're talking about boundaries in business and how lovingly saying no, how to guard your time, how to stop overgiving in your entrepreneurial journey without carrying the weight of guilt. And today, we've got a powerful guest joining us. Sophie Ash is an intuitive business coach and freedom lifestyle advocate. She helps people shift from burnout and hustle into alignment, ease, and authenticity in their businesses and lives. Family, help me welcome Sophie into the room to breathe. Okay. Sophie, before we get into any stories, I always like to check in with the soul. So I'm going to start this conversation by asking you, how's your spirit doing today?
I would say it's a little bit wobbly. I definitely did not have a good night's sleep, and I woke up feeling a bit fragile. And then I did a meditation session, and it really helped me at least become aware that that was the state that I was in. And it really helped me feel more grounded and more present. And then as the day has gone on, I have felt more and more like me. So yeah, it's not where I'd like it to be, but it's there. It's hanging in.
Yeah. Some days that's all we can do, right? We're just hanging on, trying our best to enjoy the ride.
Yeah. I'm still showing up, and that's important to me. And I know I'm going to take some recovery time, after this, and feel what I need to feel and do what I need to do. So it's all good.
Absolutely. And I applaud you for that. In addition to feeling how you're feeling, you're still making the choice to show up and, still get through things. Because I don't know, I feel like sometimes we just kind of hide away. We cancel appointments and all of that, which again is another good thing, if you're honoring your body and needing to take the time. But I applaud you for still showing up and pushing through.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't feel like a push for me. I think that's why I show up, because often it allows me to connect with people on an even deeper level than I usually would. And that's what happened in the meditation session too, is I shared some really vulnerable things, and it was emotional, and then everybody could relate to what I was sharing. And then I felt like we all connected, and I was supposed to be there, and I had thought about not going. And so because I had that positive feedback, I thought, yeah, I'm going to keep going with my day. I love what I do. I trust that these people can receive me in whatever state I'm in right now, and that it's meant to be that way.
Absolutely. So I guess before we really start to dive into things, I want to ask you if you could maybe share how you first realized that boundaries weren't just nice to have when it comes to business, that, they're truly essential for your peace and growth.
I think it was when I first discovered human design, which is not something that many people talk about, and I'm not an expert in it. But when I discovered the concept of human design, it was with a coach that I was working with at the time, and she said to me, you know, you really only have 4 hours worth of energy for work every day to use, and the rest of the time you need to be recovering and, you know, reflecting and all this. And I was like, whoa, I feel like you just saw into my soul somehow. And I felt like she was speaking a truth that I had never wanted to admit to myself, that I didn't have as much capacity for doing things as I wanted to have. So it wasn't necessarily the human design itself that helped, but it was recognizing that this is true for me. I have a limited amount of energy. And if I really want to make an impact in the world and reach people in the way that I want to reach them, and support them in the way that I want to support them, I have to be pouring from a full cup. I have to. I can't get into my zone of genius. I can't be the best version of myself if I'm showing up depleted. So sometimes it's easier said than done. You know, here I am and I'm feeling pretty depleted today, but you know, I think that's where your greater purpose can kick in, and it can give you some extra energy that helps you get through. But even just that awareness that we can't do all the things. I mean, we're only human. It comes from a practical place, and then recognizing that how we were viewing ourselves was not in alignment with the reality of what we're actually working with.
Right. Yeah, I love that, because for me, it, you know, hearing you say that, it just sounds like boundaries weren't just about structure, but about protecting your spirit too. You know, there's a sense of freedom that comes with that. And I guess speaking of freedom, like maybe let's start to unpack what freedom means to you. When you think about, you know, a freedom focused lifestyle, what does that mean to you as an entrepreneur, and how do boundaries play a role in creating that freedom for you?
Yeah, I think the definition of freedom has definitely evolved over the years and has become even more dynamic than the way I used to look at it. But I think these days it's a reflection of, can I be true to myself? Can I speak my truth? Can I operate authentically? Can I give myself what I need? Can I care for myself, nurture myself, support myself, and still get things done, still operate and function in society? So it's also recognizing that my energy is fluctuating and my priorities are always changing. People expect things from me, people ask things from me all the time, and there's a lot of potential things that I could do, but ultimately I get to decide what I actually do and how I operate on a daily basis, on an hourly basis, whatever that looks like. So when you really slow everything down and you look at it hour by hour, day by day, there's a lot of freedom in there, because every decision that we make can come from what feels right to us if we choose for it to. And so protecting my energy and retaining my integrity and speaking out for what I believe in, it allows me to have more freedom, because it allows me to say yes to the things that I'm excited by, that I'm feeling drawn to, and no to the things that sound draining or not aligned for me, or that I don't have the capacity to do in that moment. So I think it's just all part of an ecosystem that I'm living in every day that allows me to really appreciate what experiences I'm having, and that's all curated by me.
Yeah. And I love the fact that you said that you get to do it, right? A lot of times we say we have to do something, but you chose the word that you get to, because it is, like you said, it's a choice. You wake up every day and choose. So for someone listening to this right now who's maybe caught in the grind, what's one small boundary that you would recommend that they could maybe set for just this week that would make them feel a little more free?
Yeah, I think having a boundary with yourself, in that you could give yourself at least a couple of minutes before making any kind of decision. That can go a really long way. So let's say it could be a small decision like what you're going to eat or what time you're going to go to bed, or if you're going to answer the phone when somebody rings you, or it could be something bigger like, am I going to take on this client? Am I going to put in my proposal? Am I going to volunteer myself to help out with something? If we just give ourselves a couple of minutes to really sit with ourselves and feel into it, we realize that we might be pulled towards things that we've maybe done habitually in the past, or that other people are pushing us to do, that maybe aren't what we really want or what we really need. And even 2 minutes can be, it can feel like a huge amount of time when we're not used to giving it to ourselves. So one of the conscious things I do is when an email comes in and it's like requesting something, or it's requiring something of me, or it's making me think, I will read it and I will let myself sit with it for a while and maybe do some other things, come back to it. And then I might have a different idea about how I want to respond to it, as opposed to just my instinct, which is say yes or give them what they need. And yeah, I think that's not necessarily seen as a conventional boundary, but it allows us to decide what is right for us and what is not, which then has a knock-on effect with all the other things that we do or don't do.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm a big advocate for learning how to pause so that way you can respond before you react. I think that the outcome is always so much better when you take, even just 5 minutes, 10 minutes, like you said, to sit with it, see how you feel about it, and not rush to judgment, because I think that makes us say yes to things too quickly. And sometimes it also lets us, or I guess puts us in the position to say no to things that maybe could have been, a beneficial opportunity.
Yeah.
And I know that many entrepreneurs struggle to say no. People in general, right? We struggle to say no. What's your approach to say no in a way that protects your energy but still feels authentic?
Yeah, I think it can look very different depending on what it is and who's involved. And I think we have to think about preserving the relationships with others and with ourselves. And there's a lot of different factors. And we have to think about our energy, our capacity for explaining things, or even do we need to explain something at all? I had a situation today where I had 3 meetings back to back with just a 30-minute window, and somebody wanted to meet with me, and normally I would say no, but it was somebody who was responding to me saying, hey, does anyone have any ideas as to what I could do with such and such a thing? And I wasn't expecting anyone to actually respond, but this person had gone out of their way to suggest something to me. And I said, it's going to be hard for me to fit this in, but I'm planning to go for a walk in that 30 minutes. I'm going to go get my Starbucks. I'm going to go get a snack. I'm going to get out in the sun. And, maybe I can just call you when I'm doing that. And so she had the expectation that we'd have a short call within that window. I waited until I'd gotten outside. I'd ordered my Starbucks. I'd gotten out of my environment. So it meant that I called a few minutes late. And then I reminded her that I've got a busy day. There's a lot going on, but I wanted to just give you a little bit of time because this is a break for me. I'm doing this in a way that feels good to me, not as another thing added to my list. She gave me her recommendation, and then I immediately realized this is not something that I really want to do. But I took the time to explain how it wasn't feeling aligned for me. And I thanked her for her perspective. And I said, I'll keep it in my back pocket in case things change in the future. I'd love to see you at some of the other stuff that we have going on. And she was totally fine with it. She didn't expect me to run with the idea, implement the idea, and she didn't take it personally when I said no. And I chose to do that in a way that did take a bit of extra time and effort, but I really value that relationship, and I was grateful that she had suggested it to me. So I wanted her to know why I chose not to do it, and that felt good to me. There are other situations where I don't feel the need to explain myself at all. I don't really care what the person thinks because I didn't even ask them their opinion. I didn't invite them in to have an opinion about my life or my decisions. So in those cases, it's easier to maybe be a bit more abrupt or a bit more direct, or just to even ignore them altogether, depending on if what kind of relationship you have. So I think you have to think of it as like a hierarchy of, we have a certain amount of energy, we have certain people, and we have certain relationships, we have certain things going on and certain priorities. And so how can we navigate each of those things in accordance with that hierarchy, instead of just looking at them all on the same plane, which is just a recipe for disaster, because we shouldn't be treating like a stranger that we've never heard of before in the same way that we treat like our partner who we live with every day. Like there's different amounts of attention that we should be giving them. And so I think it's about taking it day by day, moment by moment, and recognizing that we do the best that we can when we can.
Yeah. And I think that that's just so powerful, because I think many people feel like boundaries, or, just even saying no is rejection instead of seeing it as the protection. I like that you were able to honor her, by giving her the time and respecting the time, you made this appointment. However, respecting yourself to say, well, I'm willing to meet you somewhere in the middle, but I have to do so in a manner that feels good to me. So that way you didn't sacrifice, and then you both could walk away with no regrets. Because if you would have called her in the beginning and then rushed your coffee and missed your walk, then you would have been left with regrets, because you're like, oh, I could have gone out and did this instead of taking this call.
Yeah, and initially I had proposed that we meet yesterday because I had a lot less meetings yesterday, and she was the one who said, no, I need to do it today, and this is the window. So then I thought, okay, well, how can I still meet my needs whilst giving her a little bit of attention, while still protecting myself by explaining that I'm not going to take this idea and run with it. And again, it's just, there's so many factors to consider, and there's so many different things going on. And I didn't know yesterday that I was going to have poor sleep last night. I didn't know, how my meetings would go, how much energy I would have today when that call came up. And I thought to myself, I could just grab my phone and call her and maybe I'll miss the walk. But I thought, no, it was important to me that I had those pieces in place. So even though I'm calling a few minutes late, I've given myself a chance to get out, make my order, get my shades on, do some sunscreen, like that's what I need to be able to do it in an enjoyable way, as opposed to in a, oh, why did I agree to this? I've got another thing to do. It's keeping me from what I really want to do. Like, she didn't even know that any of that was happening on my end. How could she?
Right.
It's me being true to myself by honoring what I set out to do in terms of meeting my needs and still being respectful of her. So when you can strike that balance rather than just abandoning your own stuff for the other person, then everybody can get what they need in a lot of cases. And really, what is a few minutes here and there? Is anybody going to really be upset about it? And if they are they somebody who you want in your life, if they can't understand that you're just juggling things or you're doing the best that you can?
Right. Yeah. And again, that compromise, it was, so I don't know, like I said, it was just such a privilege, such an honor to be able to do. And like you said, even though it wasn't something, the idea that she was proposing wasn't something that you wanted to move forward with, you still had the opportunity to just take up space. Because, as human beings, we all just want to be seen. We all want to be heard. And so giving someone that space, even when, you're not moving forward with an idea, is still, to me, is just such a blessing. When you think about, oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, also, we can't expect that other people will give us the reasons why they do or don't do things. I mean, it's nice to be given an explanation or a rationale or something, but a lot of the time we don't get it, and we can't expect that because it's up to them whether they want to share that with us or not, and only they know what their capacity is and what they're dealing with. And so I'm very grateful when I do have some kind of insight that tells me, okay, they're not upset with me, or it's not that it was a bad suggestion, or it's not really a rejection. It helps, but at the same time, it's a bonus. And when we think about ourselves from that lens as well, that we don't owe that to anyone, we can choose to go the extra mile to give it to them if we really care about them and if we can in that moment, but we don't owe that to anyone. We can just say no and not give an explanation.
Yeah. And the thing is too, sometimes we give the explanation and they don't receive it. We could deliver it with the best of intentions and, go over all the reasons why you don't want to move forward with a project. And then they still not receive it. So I don't think that there's really a right or wrong. Like you said, it's all about if it's on your heart to do and to give them an explanation and provide, constructive criticism or feedback for them so that person can continue to grow, then by all means share that. But if it's just no, sometimes it's just no, and the beauty is no is a complete sentence. So you don't owe anyone any explanation.
Yeah, and we can't predict what that reaction might be, and we can't let that reaction deter us from doing what is the right thing for us. I mean, an example comes to mind. I get a lot of applicants to my coaching program in the medical communication space, and I think very carefully to myself about whether or not I want to consider them for enrollment or not. And I'm very particular about that because of the dynamic that we go into and how much of myself I have to give, and I have to believe in the potential of that person. I have to believe that this dynamic will be positive and successful on both ends and things like that. So a lot of the time I reject people, and if they really push me to tell them why I'm rejecting them, I try to do that in the most neutral yet honest way I can. And so a lot of times I will say to the person, I only work with people with very strong written English because we're taking things to a more advanced level. And so I don't feel that your English is quite there yet, but feel free to apply in a year or two if you're working on that with a tutor or somebody. But one person could react to that. And I've had people react and say, I'm so glad that you gave me that feedback because I know I need to work on that. And I've been thinking of hiring a tutor, and I'm going to go do that, and I'm going to work on that. And then maybe I will come back, and I'm really grateful for your perspective. And then I've had other people who've gotten really mad at me and really defensive, and they've been angry, and they've tried to convince me that I'm wrong and that they actually should be allowed in. And I've even had LinkedIn block the messages and say, this is harassment, we don't think you want to read these messages. And I'm like, cool, I'm just gonna block that person, because they obviously flipped out about it. And I'm saying the exact same thing in the exact same way, and it's me enforcing that boundary, and they either appreciate it and they respect me for it, or they don't like it and they rebel and they lash out. And so sometimes it's just not that we're doing anything wrong or that we're being unreasonable. It's just that the other person is choosing how they react to it, and we can't control that. So we can't let that influence the actual decisions that we make, and any explanation or any detail comes after the fact. And we've got to then be aware that we can't let that affect how we handle this situation going forward.
Yeah. How do you navigate clients or collaborators who push boundaries while staying professional and kind?
I think it depends on what you care about most in your business, what you value. So let's say if you really value the relationships that you have with your clients, you're probably going to want to be a bit more flexible with them. You're going to want to be a bit more accommodating. You're going to want to take the time to talk through what your availability is, what your ideas are, how you think that they should be pivoting or adapting on their end. Whereas if you value your freedom, if you value your autonomy, if you value feeling respected, you're probably not going to bend so much. You're probably going to be willing to let go of that client, let go of that project, be willing to sacrifice any opportunities that might come because you're more direct, or you're more firm, or you're more protective of yourself and where you want to draw the line. But you can't have it both ways. I think you have to be very aware of what your priority is and what value is the primary one that you want to uphold. Those are just a couple of examples. Like, it could be authenticity, for example. Like, if they want you to say a certain thing that isn't quite true, but it would help them get the outcome that they want, it's kind of manipulative. And you might have a strong value that you have to be honest and authentic, and you don't want to do that. So if you say no, you have to be willing to die on that hill if that really matters to you. But if that doesn't really matter to you, maybe that's something you're willing to do to move the project along. So how can we really know if we're setting the boundary appropriately unless we ask ourselves, what is the value that we choose to uphold above anything else? Like, we can't have like several competing values that we equally pay attention to. We have to prioritize one, and we get to choose what that is, but that might not be the same one that the other person has. And so that's where we enter into conflict, and that's where things come to the surface and we realize that that person is not aligned with us, or we cannot move forward with them, which is a good thing. We're not supposed to do everything with everyone all the time. So I just think it's part of that evolution of getting to know ourselves, getting to know others, and also kind of the phases of life that we go through with certain people and certain opportunities that don't last forever.
Yeah. And the thing about boundaries that I've learned is that boundaries have the tendency to trigger different emotions from different people. And so a lot of times when we set boundaries, for some people that triggers guilt or fear, discomfort. How do you hold space for those emotions while staying committed to your own limits?
Yeah, I think part of it is you can protect yourself from those types of responses depending on how sensitive you are and how likely you are to internalize those emotions. It's very easy for us to say that, oh, don't take it personally, or don't let this affect you. This is their problem, not yours. But if you're an empath, if you are naturally kind of absorbing others' emotions and negative states, which I can relate to being a highly sensitive person and a strong empath, then I might, first of all, make efforts to avoid being in those situations in the first place if I can help it. It's very different to send someone a text or an email versus like be in person with them while they're having this type of reaction. It does affect our mood, our energy, our own thoughts and emotions. And at the same time, it might be the kinder thing to do to say the thing in person, but then we have to know that there's a trade-off there with ourselves. So we can think about how we enforce the boundary and the wording that we use and the approach that we take and how much room we give them to I don't want to say fight back, but retaliate or disagree with us. Like, how much room are we giving them to do that? Because if we're giving them a lot of room to do that, they're going to think that they can one up us, or they can convince us to change our minds, or convince us to buy into their reality or their priorities, when actually maybe that doesn't change what we think or how we feel. So I think it's recognizing that it is a complex situation. Every single dynamic is going to be different depending on the person you're dealing with. If you have a more mature person, you probably get a sense that they're going to be more accepting and less conflicting than somebody who's maybe younger or less mature or less experienced in that area, who might be more likely to lash out or get upset with something. But ultimately, you can't control any of it, and you can't 100% protect yourself at all times. I mean, we have the option to block people, we have the option to walk away, we have the option to drive away, fly away, whatever we want to do. We can take physical measures to protect ourselves. We can take emotional measures to protect ourselves. We can talk to a friend, a therapist, a mentor, a coach. We can do meditation, we can do journaling. A lot of the time we're just recovering from these experiences because we can't prevent them from happening. But ultimately we learn like, what could we have done differently? What kind of person are they? What kind of person am I? Do I want to be in this situation again? If I was, what would I do? What would I say? And that's not to say that we can always criticize how we responded, but it gives us an opportunity to learn and reflect and make it something valuable in and of itself, as opposed to just, oh, this was a negative exchange and I don't want to feel that again.
Yeah. And I think that's such a healing reminder, that our feelings don't have to disappear for a boundary to still be valid. Too often, we think that once we set a boundary that we're supposed to feel nothing but relief and confidence or peace. But, once that guilt starts to creep in or the fear of disappointing somebody rises up, we start to question ourselves, right? Like, did I do the right thing? Should I have said yes instead of telling them no? But I just think at the end of the day, feelings don't have to vanish for a boundary to still be worthy. You can still feel the weight of guilt and honor your no. You can still feel the fear and still stand firm in your truth, because boundaries aren't, they're not about eliminating the emotion that is tied to it. They're really about anchoring you in alignment to what feels good for you, what speaks to you, even when the feelings, someone else's feelings are loud. I think it's all about remembering that even feeling discomfort is not really a sign that you're wrong. It's just a sign that, there's still growth to be had. And, healing doesn't erase every trigger for people. It teaches us how to choose yourself instead of, someone's presence, just someone being there. And I think that's where like freedom really lies. Yeah, I don't know. Like I said,
I agree. I think sometimes the right thing to do is the most difficult thing. Sometimes it's the most uncomfortable thing, because it's the thing that breaks the cycle or breaks the pattern that we are used to, which might not have been serving us. So of course it's going to be uncomfortable if we say no to someone who's used to us always saying yes, or we move away from something that we identify with, that's part of who we are as a person. It doesn't have to be, but there's going to be a lot of resistance there. And so there's a lot of cases where standing up for ourselves or speaking out or moving away from something or moving towards something is going to feel even wrong at the time. It's going to feel bad. It's going to feel like you doubt yourself. But as long as you remember why you made that choice, and you can come back to that value, that goal, that intention, the place that you were in when you made that decision, you can't really have any regrets about these things, because you're honoring who you were at that time and who you still are now.
Yeah, I agree with you. I want to talk a little bit about work-life integration, because there's a certain balance that has to come, in what we do every day. And, in a world that glorifies this hustle sort of mentality, how do you structure your work and personal life to honor your mental health and self-care?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, the way it looks now might not be the way that it looks 6 months from now, a year from now, a few years from now. So we do have to recognize that we're still on a trajectory, and that even if we're trying to optimize things and we're trying to improve things, that doesn't just happen overnight usually. So even if we become an entrepreneur, we then have to learn how to create structure and create accountability and create systems and ways of being that work for us. And so there's no like quick fix for that. A lot of the time we might learn from past ways of dealing with things, like, oh, if I go for a walk, I'm gonna feel better. But then sometimes we'll respond in that exact same way and we won't feel better. We won't feel good. And we'll be like, hey, why is this happening? Like, it worked before, but it's not working now. So it's a lot of it is just learning about yourself, learning about what you value, what you care about, what you need, how much structure feels good to you, how much do you need other people in your life, how much support or input do you need from other people, how often do you want to engage with other people, what kind of work do you want to be doing, what kind of clients do you want to have. You got to ask yourself these questions and constantly be reflecting on, this felt really good, and why did that feel good? How could I recreate more of that? Or how could I have optimized that better? And eventually you kind of refine and you develop these systems and this structure that does create a really nice balance, because it's based on all of these kind of minuscule observations that you've made, that where you've learned about yourself and who you are. And we don't change that much over time. So, even though things may gradually evolve or improve, ultimately we're still who we are, and we can still learn from all of our past experiences and create something that is unique to us and feels good to us. And I think part of it is having that flexibility to know that one ideal day could be very different from another ideal day, depending on all the other factors around you. So I could be doing several podcasts in one day and really loving it today, but I could have another day where I have several podcasts and I don't love it because of whatever reason. Then I can analyze that and say, well, oh, maybe it's because I didn't meet the person before I did the interview, or maybe it's because I should have really rescheduled that interview because I just had a vacation the next day and I was stressed about it. Like, maybe I didn't really vibe with that person and that's the reason why. Or maybe I needed more time, but I had to fit it into less time. Or maybe it's because I was like in my office and it was too hot and I was uncomfortable. So be willing to learn, be willing to adapt, be willing to change things up, and be willing to kind of, I guess, advocate for yourself to get those little things that make a huge difference to how you feel, but people might not understand.
Yeah. And I love that. I feel like you really painted a picture of what it looks like to hold space for yourself, even in the middle of the grind.
Yeah.
And speaking of that, I know as entrepreneurs, our schedules can pull us in a million different directions at any given moment. Do you have any non-negotiable self-care rituals that keep you grounded no matter how busy things get?
I like that, because non-negotiable is a very specific thing for me. And I think even with the non-negotiables, they sometimes can be negotiable. It just depends on the specifics. I would say, I really like the way you phrased it because it's making me think about so many things. I'd say one of my non-negotiables is I don't take meetings before 10 a.m. I just don't like to. My sleep is notoriously not good, regardless of how hard I try. And so I need that extra time in the morning to get as much sleep as I can and have time to be ready to start my day. And I can't predict how I'm gonna feel. So I know if I try to make myself get on a call or do something before 10 a.m., I'm not going to enjoy that. I'm going to feel like I'm forcing myself, and that's going to be traumatic for me. So normally it's 11 or even 12 when I start doing meetings, and I only have like 2, maybe 3 meetings in a day. I'm very strict about that. I also have Wednesdays is my meeting free day, so I don't have any calls at all on a Wednesday. I think we talked about this a little bit last time we spoke. That has been huge for me because like I can go to appointments, I can see a friend, I can make a personal call or what have you, but I don't have any work-related calls on Wednesday. So that's my day to kind of reflect, create, catch up on things, do whatever I feel I need to do. That's been huge for me. I would say another one is with my partner, we try to always spend a couple of hours together between 5 and 7 p.m. So he's working 9 to 5. We work from home. He's in and out of meetings. I'm doing my stuff. By the time we get to 5 p.m., I usually don't want to work anymore. Sometimes I'll work like later in the evening, but I need a break. So we've learned to spend time together, even if we're just like making dinner or go for a walk or go to the grocery store. Like, we still take that time, because if we don't, we find that there's kind of a buildup of things we haven't said. We feel disconnected. We end up having arguments. And so that's a really sacred time that we've learned to create and carve out for ourselves. I think other than that, I don't want to ever feel like I have to do something that I don't want to do. Like, in general, as an entrepreneur and somebody who doesn't have kids, doesn't have like obligations that require me to do things I don't want to do, I get to choose how I spend all of my time and all of my resources. So if I find myself not wanting to do something, I don't, like, there's really nothing holding me to that other than something in my own mind. So I will always question that and ask myself, why do I feel like I have to do this? And why am I not enjoying this? Is there a reality in which I don't do that thing? And almost always there is, and I take it. And it's really empowering.
Yeah. And I think that it's so important. We bonded over the Wednesdays, because when you said that, I'm like, oh yeah, me too. My eyes lit up, because I call Wednesday my healing day. And I choose, to do it that way, because again, if you work Monday through Friday, then yeah, you have Saturday and Sunday. So to me, the weekend was off the table, because that's a given. And I said, you know what, Wednesday, middle of the week, yeah, I'm going to refill my cup on that day. So I choose not to see clients, and I always have people who want to come in and say, oh, but, could you do this? And I have to tell them I could, but I won't, because I've designated this as my day. If I meet you on that day, it's truly an honor. Okay. Because again, that's the day to kind of refill your cup. And I think that people really need to start normalizing that. Everybody doesn't have the luxury of taking a whole day. And I understand that. It has to work for you. The whole key to a non-negotiable is it needs to be something that works for you. And it needs to be set up in a way that people don't even have aren't even put in the position to negotiate. Wednesday's off the table, period. Asked and answered, And so it's really important for people to set up and to know your why. We don't just declare Wednesdays as a day that we don't take on meetings or see clients just because it's the middle of the week. We do so because we know come Wednesday, we need to refill our cup. We need to do things to get over what has happened on Monday and Tuesday and prepare ourselves for Thursday and Friday.
Yeah. And a big part of what makes my work enjoyable is when I have an idea and I let my brain just be creative and like run with the idea. And when I have a vision for something I want to create, I want to go and do that thing. But it's difficult to do the thing when you're in meetings or when people are expecting things of you. So by the time I get to Wednesday, there's usually something I want to create, something I want to write, something I want to record, something I want to make or design or construct in whatever way I need to. And I have the space for that. I have the creative freedom to do that. So it's really important to me that I know that I'm not just accumulating ideas and like spinning my wheels and then not able to actually go anywhere. And knowing that about myself is why I chose the Wednesday thing. And there are other people who are like, that wouldn't work for me at all. And that's perfectly valid as well. I think I played around with a lot of things. Like I only have meetings in the afternoons so I can be productive in the mornings, and that worked well for a while. But it just, again, it depends on what kind of priorities you have, how it feels. And maybe a year from now, I'm not doing the Wednesday thing. Maybe there's something else that works well for me at that time. I don't know. And I don't have to know, which is part of the fun of it.
Yeah. So when you think about, when you're coaching others on boundaries, in their business, what's the most common challenge that you see that people face, and how do you guide them through it?
Yeah. Well, sometimes you can burn bridges, and a lot of people are afraid of that happening, either because they see their identity as being tied up with those people, or their reputation as being attached to those people. They don't have new relationships that they're forming or new communities of people that they can move towards. So it just kind of feels like they're being destructive without anything to replace that with. And so when there are situations of codependency, you can notice it in particular where you're afraid to let go of that person, or you're afraid to upset that person, or be rejected or pushed away or excluded by those people, because we don't have anyone else to fill that void, or anything else that can make us feel whole or enough. And so I think that's one of the most challenging things, is that we've got to be building the new and cultivating these new relationships and these new creative environments, and accepting, nurturing, safe environments for us to lean into when we're dealing with these destructions of what we used to know. Because I mean, I'm sure if anybody has moved away from where they grew up, they will have experienced this, where they go back and they see the people in their hometown, and they kind of revert back to an older version of themselves that is not as mature, or doesn't know themselves as well. And then when they move back to where they live now, or they go to a new place, they can operate from this identity of being more level-headed or more grounded or more, whatever they've evolved into. And so I think the same thing happens with people around us in general, or constructs that we've created, habits that we formed, behaviors that we exhibit. We can move away from them, but it's much easier to do that when we're replacing them with better, more nurturing things. So I would say that's how I support them the most, is trying to inject some of that excitement and that newness and that energy and that momentum, that just excitement for what's to come, so that they can let go of some of those things that aren't serving them, and know that there's more for them to focus on and things they can build.
Yeah, I think that many people stay in toxic dynamics because they fear, like you said, being rude, or that, it's truly burning a bridge. But I really believe that politeness at the expense of your peace is a very heavy price to pay. And boundaries sometimes mean walking away from people completely, and that's okay. You just have to be okay with understanding that burning a bridge isn't all about spite. We're not doing these things to be spiteful. It's honestly about honoring your energy and your path, and understanding that some relationships, friendships, jobs, collaborations, they just simply no longer serve your growth. And continuing to invest time or emotion in them will just keep you trapped. It'll keep you stuck. And if you are a person who is wanting to grow, you have to be willing to let some things go. You have to be willing to burn some bridges in order to find a new route towards, where you're headed.
And I think the burning of the bridges was always the thing that I was the most afraid of in terms of setting the boundaries. But I think everybody could have a different version of that. Like I think it's important to identify what is the thing that you're most afraid of happening if you set the boundaries. Is it that you lose people's respect? Is it that your reputation will be destroyed? Is it that your identity will change? Is it that you won't have as many people in your life? Is it that you'll be lonely? Is it that you'll be poor? Like what is it that you're afraid of? Because then you can find out how to replace that in other ways, so that it's easier to let go of in those unhealthy dynamics.
Yeah. And I think that boundaries are often linked to like a deeper self-worth. And so it's important for people to truly start to spend time honestly with themselves. and boosting your own, your self-confidence, your self-worth, things like that, because it makes you stronger when it comes time to really set those boundaries. Um,
Mm-hmm.
how
Yeah.
has your personal healing journey influenced the way you run your business?
Oh, it's been very, very closely correlated
Mhm.
because I think we're all capable of showing up when we have imposter syndrome, and we can do the things and put on a mask and make it seem like we're a certain way, and then afterwards recover or wonder how we got through it. But what we all need to try to do, at least I believe, is address the imposter syndrome, and actually be able to show up as our authentic selves in those situations and find ways of being accepted. And maybe it's just that those people are never going to appreciate us. Maybe that those things that we're trying to do are not a fit for us, and we shouldn't even be trying to make it work. Maybe it's just showing us that that's not the direction that we ought to go in. But I think as we evolve as individuals, we get a greater sense of where we fit and where we don't fit. And as entrepreneurs, we're not bound to the walls that society puts up for us. We can tear down those walls. We can rebuild new walls. We can exist in whichever capacity we want to, and we can choose who gets to be close to us and who doesn't. And that's a really exciting, empowering thing, but it's also a very scary thing if you don't really know what you want or who you are or what that looks like. So I think coaching has been really helpful for me to have someone guide me through that, where I was having an identity crisis, or I was doubting myself, or I wasn't sure whether to push or pull back. Um, somebody who can see you through a different lens, that can reflect it back at you and say, interesting that you don't think you're this way because I think you are, and here's why. And those kinds of reflections and those conversations are really, really helpful, because then when we understand them, we can apply them in our business, and we can see that our business is really just an extension of who we are. It's not like we put on one mask to go to work and another mask when we come home from work. It's actually that we're the same person all the time. So that's been the biggest thing for me, is kind of blending those two together and recognizing that I am still me regardless of what I'm doing, and even just allowing myself to have hobbies and interests and things outside of work and letting people see that has been interesting, because sometimes we feel like, oh, these people shouldn't know about these things that we do, or these people we hang out with, and there's this kind of curation that happens, but that all costs us energy and that all holds us back. And so I think that merging, that integration, that blending of all the different facets of us is where we can be at peace with ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's honest and it's freeing. When you are able to find that happy merger, I guess. Being able to blend your hobbies with, your passion, and it really shows people like the whole picture. I think about, especially being a coach, regardless of what your specialty is, people, your clients see you one way, and then they put you on this pedestal. And so the moment you do something to fall off of that pedestal, people clutch their pearls. They're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe she said that, or, does that. And I think that when you figure out, like I said, that healthy merger of being able to share the things that you enjoy, having that full transparency within your community is great. You still get to maintain a level of privacy. Obviously, you have things that you say, what, maybe my family is off limits, or, things like that. So we still reserve the right to our privacy, but having a sense of transparency with your community, I think, is like next level coaching, because then
Yeah.
people see you and recognize you're a person. and you're a person just like me. Oh, she likes painting, she likes dancing, she likes that. You're like, you're a person just like me, me too. And so it
Yeah.
just makes you more relatable, I think.
Yeah, I completely agree. I can tell when somebody's holding back or when they're curating a certain version of themselves that they want to show. And it bothers me because that's not what I value. I value honesty and authenticity and expression. So I do bring in personal things into my coaching. I tell them examples of things I'm dealing with. Like right now, my mom is coming to visit, and I haven't spoken to her for like 10 years, and it's a really big deal, and I invited her to come, and I got to set the terms of how she came, and I didn't even know if she would accept the invitation, but like it's a big thing that's happening for me, and I want to show myself that I can still run my business, I can still live my life, I can spend time with her, and everything isn't going to fall apart. I still have all the same freedom, autonomy, support, and everything, and I'm ready for it now. And so I'm telling my students that I'm going through this because this is the kind of thing that they're also figuring out, like how to fit their business in around their family and other commitments. And one person had their pet pass away, and one person going through divorce, and there's all kinds of things that we're dealing with that affect how we run our business that we shouldn't be leaving out off the table. It's relevant. It's important that we acknowledge that.
Yeah, I know when last year, I think I shared this with you, my mother-in-law was diagnosed with dementia. And so when we decided to become the full-time caregivers for her, I kind of freaked out for a moment because I'm like, how am I going to do all the things that I do? I run a home-based business. How am I going to see clients if I have to do this? And it was so funny because it took one of my clients, me having a conversation with her, for her to remind me, you show up every day and you teach us about life coach, self-care in your life coaching. And, you tell us that regardless of what we're doing, life is going to life. So she said, tell your clients, hey, this is a new thing that I'm doing, and let them know what to expect in the beginning. Maybe you won't have to walk away, or maybe you will. And so when she said that, it was just the simplest thing. And I'm like, I know this, but for a brief moment, because life started lifing for me, I forgot it. And, it's been truly a blessing being able to share, this part of my family with people, because I think that it shows people that, even as a coach, we go through things too. We experience life the same way everyone else does, and we are still navigating. We, get to almost mirror things to people to show them you can still have it all. It might not look the way you expected it to look, but you still can run your business and attend to your family and prioritize you. Like, you can do all the things. You just have to, prioritize them.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the time we forget that the reason we get so much resistance from the world in general is because they themselves haven't experienced it yet, or they didn't know anybody who had done that. So when we go first and we show them that this is possible, then they might actually learn something from us. They might feel inspired. They might give themselves permission to make a change that they didn't think they could make before. So somebody has to go first. And I love being that person. Even if I don't know anyone who's done it, I don't have support from anyone, I can still do it because it feels good to me. And then later on, I might see that, oh, now so-and-so is saying that they were inspired by what I did, and now they're doing this and that, and that's really cool. It's not that I'm doing it for them, but it adds to that sense of meaning as a coach that I can show people like how it's done, so in so many words.
Yeah, I like the idea. I go first, right? Because I think about it, I really believe I'm that way too now. And it started with the idea of, okay, let me just do it and get it out the way. But I realized after getting it out the way, now I get to sit back in the audience and learn something. I did it unsure. I did it nervously, but I did it. And now I get to sit back and watch everybody else who watched me go first. So it's another one of those things where I get to do it. And the longer I sit in the audience and wait to be second, third, fourth, or fifth, now I'm nervous. Now the anxiety set in. Whereas if I'm just like, I'll go first, that you expected it to kind of be whatever it was going to be because they're the first ones up.
Yeah.
So I like that.
Yeah.
um,
I'm writing my first book at the moment, and I'm feeling that
mhm,
a lot. Like, I'm imagining people are gonna read it, they're gonna find out all this stuff about me, and then some of
yeah,
them are gonna be really inspired and really appreciative of it, and some of them maybe that they won't be, but it's kind of like I get to live it again because then I'll hear it from them, what resonated, what helped them, and then maybe there's going to be a bunch of other books that come after this one, and I'm really enjoying going first because if I can do it, they can do it too. So
yeah,
isn't it cool that I get to show them that? Like, I think
yeah,
it's really cool.
yeah. If you could leave one piece of wisdom about boundaries for entrepreneurs looking to build a life that nurtures their spirit, what would it be?
I can't stress enough how important it is that we have discernment with respect to who we allow to be close to us. I think sometimes we start a relationship with good intentions and maybe it does serve us initially, but then over time it is not helpful anymore. Or maybe we feel obligated to keep a certain relationship going because we're introduced by so and so, or they're connected to this thing and that thing, or it's part of our identity. But I think, we really have to step back and ask ourselves, what's really serving us in this moment? Who do we want to invest in, and who is giving back in ways that we are grateful for? I think even with friendships, romantic relationships, it's never about, like, you're not keeping score of who does what or who puts in or takes out, but you do have an awareness of it if it feels relatively balanced. If you feel like I'm benefiting from this, they're benefiting from this, that's what relationships are. They do have to be mutually beneficial, and if one person is no longer benefiting, then you don't have to continue that relationship. And so whether it's a business partner or a client or a student or a company or a friend, like we have to really ask ourselves who's adding to our life and who's draining us, who's distracting us, who's holding us back. Because if we're not willing to cut those people out and allow in the new people, we're just going to stay exactly where we are. I mean, they say that you become like the 5 people you spend the most time with, and I think there's so much truth in that. I absorb so many of the ways of thinking and the values of my partner who I live with, but he's very different from me, and I can feel that we balance each other out, and I can feel that that's mutually beneficial, that I'm imparting things on him too, and we're still ourselves independently, but we are growing and learning from each other. Whereas there are other people who I'm very aware, like, I'm distancing myself from them. They're not helping me move forward. They're not helping me accept myself. And so I'm thinking, oh, that's a really negative person. I don't feel good when I'm around them. And that, I mean, that's huge. So you got to pay attention to that. I think that's kind of what I would leave you guys with, is just slowing down and smelling the roses and seeing if they're thorny or not.
Yeah. Well, and the thing that I always try to remind people is, as we know, ships were created to take us somewhere. And so I think about relationships and friendships, companionships, whatever. And so if I'm in this relationship, if I'm on this ship, and I don't feel like I'm going anywhere anymore, then I just decided, for me, it's time for me to get off the ship. Like, it's time for me to jump ship. So regardless of how long I've been with a person, in this friendship or companionship, partnership, whatever, if I'm at a season in my life or a point in my life where it no longer serves me and it no longer, aligns with where I'm headed at this point, now I have to decline. Like, I have to, just jump ship, and I'm able to do so unapologetically because I have a plan. And, one of the things that I learned while beginning to walk in my purpose is that not everybody's meant to go with you, and that's okay. It doesn't mean we don't love them. It doesn't mean that we won't, cross paths again. We never know what that looks like in the future. So I'm okay with walking away from a person today and, wishing them well because I have somewhere to be. There's a calling on me and I can't stop, that to make someone else feel good, to make someone else feel comfortable.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and
yeah.
it's not always a linear path, sometimes there's a
Yeah.
big dip before we go up, because there's a recovery period, there's an adaptation, there's like a loss that we feel. And that's
Yeah.
normal, that's okay. That doesn't mean that there isn't going to be the up afterwards. And so we have to think long term about these decisions. And it's easy in the day to day to just keep it going because we don't want the conflict, we don't want the loss or the sadness or whatever comes from it. But we have to think long term. I mean, we're here for a long time, hopefully, and
Yeah.
we can continue to grow, we can continue to nurture ourselves and create even more exciting, fulfilling lives. And we can't do that if we just stay stuck on the ship.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to take this opportunity to really just thank you, for pouring into this space today. I honestly believe that your wisdom, your transparency, and just your overall energy is exactly what our community needs to hear. So I'm so grateful that you chose to take this time to, breathe with us today. Before we close out, I want to give you the space to share with our listeners how they can connect with you and, share any upcoming projects or offerings that you're excited about.
Yeah, well, I'm very active on LinkedIn, so you can find me on there, Sophie Ash. There's a lot of people with my name, but my current title is Freedom Lifestyle Coach. So if you are looking for more freedom, if you want to follow your intuition more, set better boundaries, preserve your energy, and build an exciting, freeing life. That's what I'm all about. That's what I help people do every day, and I absolutely love it. You can also find me on Instagram. I have a business account, Prospology, Prospology. That's more geared towards the medical communication space, which is my specialty area. And then my personal Instagram is Sophie Ash Official, which is more lifestyle oriented, like traveling, my cat, my dance, and all the kind of things that I do that complement my business but are not like business specific. So feel free to reach out to me in any of those places, and I'd be happy to chat, connect, see what you have going on, and if I can help you in any way.
Absolutely. And I'll be sure to link all of the information in the description so that way everyone knows exactly how to get in touch with you. And again, I just thank you so much for just taking up space for us today. I hope that you're able to go refill your cup and just really pour into you because you deserve it.
Yeah, I have to admit, I've been daydreaming about taking a nap after this, and I'm really excited to go do that. I'm really
Yes.
glad we did this, though. It was really nice to reflect back on, the progress I've made and the work that I do. And it's hard for people to get their heads around, but it's worth it. It's worth the effort. It's worth the taking the time to think about it and implement it, because it makes a big difference. So thanks for having
It
me.
does. No problem. Anytime. Thank you so much. Wow. I don't know about you, but this conversation with Sophie was a deep exhale. What I love the most is that she reminded us that boundaries aren't walls, they're doors. And they're doors that open us to freedom, peace, and purpose without losing ourselves in the process. If something that Sophie shared today hit home with you, go ahead and drop a green heart in the chat or comments. And as always, family, thank you so much for making space to pause, reflect, and breathe with us today. Remember, you don't have to choose between purpose and peace. Boundaries let you have both. I encourage you all to keep breathing through the highs, the lows, and every moment in between. Keep choosing peace, even when it feels just out of reach. And know that here at the Self Care Club, you will always be seen, always valued, and always supported. So don't be afraid to take up space, speak your truth, and make a little room for you to breathe. I love each and every one of you to life, and I am praying that your day is not just amazing, but aligned, intentional, and yes, on purpose, filled with purpose. This has been another Room to Breathe podcast, and I can't wait to connect with you all again soon. Thank you. I found my